Everybody, and welcome to today's webinar. Today we're going to be looking at Companies House filing. We've got 45 minutes available for us to look at that with you. My name's Tom Jeffrey. I'm one of the education and media technicians here at CaseWare UK. I'm joined by Ashley Goldsmith, the accounts production product manager, and Georgie Fleming, one of our EMT technicians. So if you've got any questions, please feel free to pop them into the question field in the GoToWebinar control panel. We won't be using the hand raising feature today because we've got quite a few of you in with us. So pop your questions into the question field and we'll get back to you as soon as we can. We're also going to be hosting a Q&A session at the end, and there'll be some opportunities during the webinar to go through some questions as well. Don't worry if we don't get back to you straight away with an answer to your question. We'll come back to you directly afterwards, and we'll also publish a Q&A document with a recording of the webinar that will be on the knowledge base. So I'll hand you over to Ash now, and we'll go through the agenda and some prerequisites as well.
Lovely, thanks Tom. Hello everyone. I'm just opening up my slides now so that hopefully everyone can see. Take those icons off as well. So there we go. Just going to go through some of the handouts that we've got available. So we've got 3 handouts that are available for you in the GoToWebinar tool here. So the first of those is the Companies House filing submissions guide. Now that's a comprehensive guide, and you'll be able to use that even if you are a beginner and it's the first time you've used our filing module. So you can by all means go ahead and download that, and it will talk you through the very basics right up to actually submitting your accounts. So that's the first of our handouts that we have included. We also have a guide to our submissions due tracker, which I will touch on later on during the broadcast. A Companies House submissions tracker is a very useful way of tracking all of your engagements to see whether they have indeed been submitted or not. And then finally, we also have our permissible Companies House filing scenarios. So that's again something that we can look at later on during my slides just now to see which types of accounts we can actually file through CaseWare. So on to the agenda for the session, and predictably, given the current circumstances, I'm going to start by mentioning the filing extension, which I'm sure most of you are aware of already, which has been granted by Companies House due to the coronavirus situation. So some of you may have already applied for that, but I'll just talk you through the details of that for anyone that might need to go ahead and claim that extension that's available. I'll also talk through the accounts formats that are valid for filing. So again, that's looking at these permissible filing formats in more detail and just pointing out different types of entity which CaseWare can currently file with Companies House. I'll also talk you through some prerequisites, so some things, some steps that you need to follow in order to be able to file with Companies House. There's several steps there, some on the CaseWare side, some on the Companies House side that you need to be aware of. And then I'll hand over to Georgie, who is going to go through and generate and submit an iXBRL instance document from a couple of actual live CaseWare files. Now, this course obviously assumes that you've already gone through and completed your tagging, your iXBRL tagging on a set of accounts. If anyone here is unfamiliar with that process, then we do have knowledge base articles and indeed other webinars which you can download and re-watch on our knowledge base. So if you want some details as to how you go about actually tagging the accounts in the first place, then by all means go back and watch those at a later date. But we're kind of picking it up from the point where you've completed your accounts and they are fully tagged. I'll also have a look at the notifications and monitoring of your submission status. So Georgie will show you how you go about sort of submitting from your live CaseWare engagement. But there is perhaps a better way of tracking your submissions, and that's actually on the cloud. So you can monitor multiple engagements on the cloud and see what progress they are towards the submission. So again, I'll open up the cloud and show you how that actually works. And then, as Tom's mentioned, we should have 5 or 10 minutes left at the end to go through any questions that you might raise. We'll try and answer those for you. If we don't manage to cover off all of those during the session, then we will be sending out further communication as a follow-up once we've finished the webinar. So moving on then to the coronavirus filing extension, which is available, and I'm sure most of you are aware that a 3-month filing extension was granted from the 25th of March, which unbelievably is about 5 weeks ago now. Been in lockdown for that long. So I would imagine those of you with filing deadlines of the end of March potentially have already claimed this extension, and perhaps those with an April filing date might be looking to do so as well. Now, one thing just to clarify is that the extension isn't automatic. You do have to actually apply for it, and you can do that on the government's website there. So were you to copy and paste that link and go online, it is it's completely available online. There's no phone calls necessary, and according to the details that we've been given, you'll simply need your company number, an email address, contact details, and your information about your reasons for needing an extension, which is obviously going to be fairly self-explanatory in a minute with the current working environment and disruption that this virus is causing. So by all means, go onto the website there if you need to for any of your engagements to claim that extension and avoid any late filing fines. So what type of accounts can you actually file with Companies House? I'm just going to let those run through the screen there. So we have various different entity types, all the way from an audit exempt dormant entity or a micro entity, right the way up to the larger scale, being an audited group entity. Now, all of those bullet points there relate to FRS 101, FRS 102, obviously micro entities, FRS 105, or indeed IFRS entities. So they're all permissible accounts formats. The one that remains missing from our product suite that's available to file with Companies House is the LLPs. And we're going to follow up on that with a poll question shortly, which I'm going to hand over to Tom for, just to see whether there would be a degree of take up on that, were we to offer that as an available accounts format to file with Companies House. Now, obviously you have the handout which lists out these permissible accounts formats, but there's also a knowledge base article, number 1693, if you want to note that down. Obviously that's available on our knowledge base, and that article will be updated as and when further permissible accounts formats are available from CaseWare. So as and when LLPs does become available, that article will be updated with that detail. So moving on then to our prerequisites, so the steps you need to follow in order to be able to file with Companies House. First and foremost, and experienced CaseWare users will be very familiar with this, you need to make sure that you've installed the latest EPAC updates and applied those to the filing engagements that you have open. Okay, so fairly standard advice there. And we always need to make sure we've got the latest EPAC and all updates have been applied to the engagement that you're trying to file. Now, as and when you get a Companies House filing license from us, we will issue you with a new serial number. So it's quite important that you update your serial number, which would have been sent to your CaseWare contact, your AP contacts, we refer to them. So if you don't have that to hand, if you contact your systems administrator, then hopefully they will have that. If not, then if you contact our technical support team, then we'll be able to give you those details. You will also need access to your own CaseWare Cloud instance, which should be set up for you as and when you join the cloud. So it's very important that each firm has their own CaseWare Cloud instance, and you need your own instance in order to be able to file with Companies House. Now, your instance name, again, that will be given initially to your CaseWare contact. And you need to register that instance name on your machine using the CW maintenance tool. Okay, so once you've obtained that instance name, use the CW maintenance tool to register that on your machine, and that is a machine by machine setting, so it will need to be done for as many people as necessary. The final step from a CaseWare perspective, at least, is to obtain a login to the cloud. So you'll need a username and password, which obviously would be generated by your systems administrator at your end. It's not something necessarily that CaseWare support would be able to help you out with. So please go to your systems administrator to get that info, and then you'll be able to log on. So all of those bullet points are kind of CaseWare related. But there's a couple of other steps that you need. You'll need a Companies House authentication code for software filing. So that will be obtained purely from Companies House. There's nothing that we can do in order to obtain that for you. So each filing entity will need their own authentication code. So please contact Companies House for yours. And then a separate authentication code will be required for each entity that you're trying to file. Now that authentication code can be entered into the wizard on the engagement in question. The advantage of that is once you've entered it into the wizard, obviously once you roll that engagement forward, the authentication code will still be there ready for next year. Those codes don't change year on year. So those are the prerequisites that we have. Those final two, as I've mentioned there, are applicable purely to Companies House. So if you have any queries about those, you'll need to go to Companies House to obtain that information. That brings me to the end of the intro. I mentioned that poll question, so I'm just going to hand you over to Tom now, who's going to run the poll for us.
Thanks, Ash. Yeah, so we've got a poll we'd just like to run for you quickly. As Ash mentioned earlier in the slides there, we don't currently have the option available for you to file LLP accounts to Companies House, but if that's something that we added, is that something that you feel would be useful? We'd appreciate your responses there. I'll give you a little bit of time to answer. So I'm going to close the poll now. I'll just share the results on the screen. Good to see that quite a few of you would like to see that feature available. 42% yes, 35 no, 23 maybe, hopefully by the end of this webinar. Once you're a bit more familiar with Companies House filing, you might feel that that is something that you want to apply to your LLP accounts. So now that we've had that poll, thank you very much for the feedback. I'll hand you over to Georgie and we'll have a look at a CaseWare file.
Perfect, thanks Tom. Right, okay, so I'm going to take you through a couple of files today. So I'm going to start off with Daisy's Flowers Limited. So this is a FRS 102 file that you can see I have previously tagged, and as Ash previously mentioned, if you do need any assistance on tagging, then please refer to our knowledge base. So what I'm going to do is click on Generate IXBRL. And this is where I will have the option to file with Companies House. Just give that a few seconds to load. Okay, so I've got the option here for Companies House. Now what this is telling me here on the export screen is it's just telling me that I have selected the 102 taxonomy, the non-DPL version, which is correct. So I'm just going to tick that option and proceed on to the next screen. Now the destination for the output file is predetermined, so you cannot alter this. The location for it of where it will go is where your CaseWare file is sitting. So for me, this file in particular is sitting on the desktop, so that's where it will put it. It will place it into the folder on the desktop. Obviously for majority, it will be in a network location. I have some options here, some tick options. What we do recommend is you keep those as is. We do advise you not to alter those at all. So I'm going to export this. Just take a few moments again. Okay, so this has come up with the export status. So it says that it has generated any errors on here at all, then they would flag as red in this box here. You do have a CH test submission option available. So what this will provide you with is the Companies House test submission. So it will provide you with a PDF of what the accounts are going to look like once you have submitted to Companies House. But in this case, I'm just going to close this screen, and what you will see become available on the top is you have this Companies House button here. I'm just going to select that. And this is where we start to create our submission. So My Daisy's Flowers is a newly created file. So this is the first time it's being submitted. So I'm going to click on Create Submission here. And it brings up this submission box. So in my engagement properties of my caseware file, I have already linked it to the Daisy's Flowers entity on the cloud. So that information is already pre-populated. Now you can see in the lower half here, I have a couple of options available. So I've got upload only. So what this will do is it will upload the file to the cloud ready for submission. It may be that you need a manager or a senior to submit that on your behalf, or alternatively you can come back to that submission at a later date, so you can upload it ready to go. The other option is upload and submit. So this is the option I'll be selecting today. You can see that the presenter ID and the presenter authentication code is already pre-populated for me. Now, as Ash previously mentioned, that information is required and is available from Companies House directly. So if you're unsure of that information, then contact them. And I'll just click OK to that box, and it will just load for a short while if you bear with me. And it brings up this communication status. So it will show you what is occurring, so you can see that it has successfully uploaded to the cloud, but it has failed due to gateway validation. Now this is a common error that we do see, and this is relating to the presenter ID and authentication code. So if you do get this error, then it may be that you've typed that information in incorrectly, or if indeed you do believe that you have done it correctly but you're still receiving it, then it would be Companies House that you would have to contact to resolve that issue. So I'm just going to close this off for now, and I'm going to, this gives me a submission details. So this has told me that it's failed the gateway validation. I can see here the error, so I can download the error if you need to sort of discuss that internally at all. And also you can download another copy of the IXBRL accounts as well. So I'm going to close this off for now, and I'm going to jump into my DH Motors Limited file. Now the same again, I have automatically tagged this already, and I'm going to follow the same steps. So if I click on Generate IXBRL and select Companies House, you can see here that I have a couple of errors this time. What's really handy about this box is it's very self-explanatory in its errors and what needs to be resolved. So I can see here that the option to file with regulatory bodies hasn't been selected within the accounts completion section, and also I have used the wrong taxonomy. So I've used the taxonomy for the detailed profit and loss. So what I can do at this point, I'm going to close that off. And I'm going to jump to the accounts completion section of the wizard and select filing with regulatory bodies. Now what this does is it automatically removes the detailed profit and loss for you. So you don't need to alter your full set of financial statements and go into the accounts prep to do that manually. What I'm going to do as well is select the FRS 102 taxonomy. Now there's no need to re-tag your accounts at this point. By selecting that taxonomy, the non-DPL taxonomy, what that does is it suppresses the detailed profit and loss tags. So as I say, there's no need to re-tag your accounts at this point.
Just while we wait for that, Georgie, to complete, just a quick question that's come in. Why might somebody not have the Companies House option available when they go to generate and you've got the option between HMRC and Companies House? Why might the Companies House option not be there?
Oh, right, okay. So the Companies House option on that Generate IXBRL screen is driven by serial number. So as previously mentioned by Ash, when you purchase Companies House filing, you will be given a new serial number for CaseWare. So it's a case of entering that serial number into the CW maintenance within the CaseWare installation. Now it needs to be run as administrator, entering a serial number. So it may be that IT needs to do that on your behalf. For updating a serial number, we do have a knowledge base article on that. So if you pop over to the knowledge base and enter serial number into the search field, you'll be able to get hold of the knowledge base article of how to enter that.
Lovely, thank you very much.
That's okay. Perfect. Okay, so my taxonomy has now successfully switched over. So if I click on Generate IXBRL again, and select Companies House, you will see that those errors have now gone, and I'm left with this message just to say that I haven't selected the DPL version of the taxonomy, which in this case is correct. And then it would be a matter of going through the steps as I did previously in the Daisies Flowers Limited. So we just wanted to show you that today, as we do understand that they are common errors that people do come across. So I'm going to hand you back over to Ash now, unless there's any other questions at all, Tom, relevant to this section.
I think it's really just when after you've gone through the generate and then you go to the to click on the Companies House button. Why can't I click on the Companies House button on the toolbar? Presumably that means it's not illuminating in blue.
Okay, all right then. So similar to how it is at the moment. So it may be that the Companies House button is greyed out because you haven't yet gone through the Generate IXBRL and selected Companies House. Alternatively, if you have done those steps and the Companies House button is still greyed out, then it may be a case that you haven't entered your instance name or your URL into the installation. So your instance name needs to be added into the CW maintenance section. Again, similar to the serial number, there is an option on there for collaborate settings. So your instance name needs to go into there. And also within the CaseWare working papers, if you go to the options section and select CaseWare Cloud, you need to enter your firm's URL into there for the CaseWare Cloud as well. Again, knowledge base articles can be found on the knowledge base for that, and we'll also look to include links to those knowledge base articles on the Q&A document that we publish alongside the webinar recording. Perfect. All right, then I will hand over to Ash.
Thanks, Georgie. I'm just going to then take you through some of the options that are available on the cloud for actually tracking your CH submissions, and there's also a couple of other gadgets that I just want to run you through. So as you can see, I've got my dashboard open here, and you can customize your dashboard, your standard view, if you like, when you go into the cloud, to include as many of these, get my teeth in, different gadgets as you like. So I've got a total of 4 different gadgets showing here currently. Now I can go in and edit this if I want to. So what I could do is perhaps resize the CH Submissions gadget to make room for a larger window for the CH admin. I could do likewise down here for the accounts production tracker, or perhaps if I didn't want to see one of those any longer, I can just completely close that particular gadget down. I could then resave, and that would be my default view every time I go into the cloud to track my engagements. If I do want to add in any additional gadgets to my view, if I click on the Add button here, then I've got a list of available options here under the Collaborate menu, and the 2 that are most prominent for this course certainly are the CH Submissions, which I have showing here, and the CH Admin tool, which is the one over here to the right-hand side. So you just click on either of those and it would add the gadget to your particular view. Okay. Now I'm just going to cancel my changes because I'm quite happy with my standard view of tracking all of the engagements that I have. So if I look over to the right hand side, first of all, at the CH Admin gadget, this is quite a useful one because obviously once you've submitted your accounts, it takes a little while for them to either be successfully submitted or to fail for whatever reason. Now obviously where they fail, you'll need to do some remedial work in order to resubmit and ultimately hopefully get a successful submission eventually. So you need to be notified if your submission doesn't go through successfully. So therefore we can set up defaults here to send a failure email to the person who created the instance in the first place. I've got the option ticked already here to send a failure email to the person who submitted. And equally, you can also add in custom users here, I think up to 3 additional users to be emailed if any of your instances do fail on submission. So if you perhaps have a iXBRL expert within your firm, then you can add their details in there, and they would be the ones that get notified if any extra work needs to be done in order to submit successfully. There's also some other sections down here, so you could delete a lost submission if that's happened. You can just type in your ID and your code, and that would delete a submission that's been lost. You can delete any older iXBRL files that you no longer need, and delete some history, and there's working paper linkage options available in there as well. So that CH Admin tool is one that's quite useful, and I recommend adding that to your dashboard so you can sort of see at a glance where you are with those. Now back over to the left hand side, looking at the CH Submissions gadget, we're actually on our CaseWare training server at the moment here, and I've got a total now of 4 submissions, including the one which was just submitted here, Daisy's Flowers, today. So I'm currently not filtering apart from by the created date. So I can obviously change this. I can filter this out to show everything back to the start of the year if I wanted to, or if I'm looking for a particular engagement file, perhaps I could type in one specific date, so just the 28th of March, if that happened to be the date on which we'd made the initial submission. But perhaps a more useful filter is to look and see which of these has been firstly successfully submitted. So using that filter on my server, I can see that Anne's Apples Limited has been successfully submitted. We created that on the 15th of April, so a couple of weeks ago now, and that's gone through successfully. So we can be quite happy. We've got the little tick on the left-hand side to say that Anne's Apples has been successfully submitted. I can also see that in my accounts production tracker here at the bottom, that one has indeed gone through and been filed with Companies House. Now, that's good to know, but obviously what's perhaps more pressing is any failed submissions. So Daisy's Flowers, as we've seen, that one failed, but we've also got Bob's Bulbs Limited here, and that one's failed as well. We submitted that a while ago, so there may well be some remedial work required on that particular file. Now, obviously we could go back into CaseWare and open up that file, but a much better way and an easier way to go about it would be to drill down here into Bob's Bulbs Limited. And at that point, we'll get details of the submission, number 173 in this case. So we can see the exact times where we submitted the file and what the response was. And as Georgie showed you earlier in the desktop version, we can see these file names. So we can see the request going up, so that was us, our submission request. You can see an HTML copy of the accounts, which I expect some of you are familiar with, similar to our sort of print preview version, and the actual Companies House response as well, including the rejection code, in this case number 1, and the descriptions given there as well. As we mentioned earlier on, if you want some further details as to what these rejection code means, then by all means contact our support team. You have a list of those, or alternatively, if you contact Companies House, then they'll be able to give you some more information. Now, seeing as I need to do some extra work on this file, I'm going to drill down a further stage to get into my Bob's Bulbs Limited entity. There's some available tools on here within the entity itself, so I can share this entity with other people so that they would be notified of any changes that are required on this file. But what I want to do here is to open up the engagement. So I go down to engagements, click on Bob's Bulbs Limited, and then if I click on these 3 dots over here on the right hand side, I can open a synced copy of that file. Just get a warning message popping up initially that it's going to open up CaseWare, which is what I want it to do, to open up my Smart Sync engagement. Okay, so that's opening up, and now this is my Smart Sync copy of that file, and I would just go to the FinStats, which will obviously just take a few seconds to load up. And we're back at a very familiar position, as we saw on Georgie's demo a little while ago. And I can click on the Companies House button here to again see the same stuff that we just saw on the cloud. So the same information is available here, same 3 documents we can download or just view. But ultimately, obviously, what we would want to do would be to resolve this submission error. So once you found out what we need to do with regards to that rejection code, we would go in, probably go to the completion section, remove the signatories, or remove the signatory dates at least, so that we can then go ahead and edit the file and make any changes that are necessary in order for us to go back through the submission process, generate the IXBRL document, and again submit to Companies House. And hopefully this time, as you would be able to track via the cloud, we'll get a submission successful message coming through in a short while after we've actually made the submission. So hopefully that's given you a quick run through as to how the cloud interacts with submissions. I think that's pretty much everything that I wanted to go through in this demo. So it looks like we've got about 7 or 8 minutes left to go through a few questions, Tom. I'm not sure if we've had any come in, but I'll hand back to you now.
Thanks, Ash. Yeah, we have had some questions come in, so I'll just bring those up and we'll see what we've got. So in terms of submitting, if you've made a submission, can I resubmit to Companies House if I need to change something in the file?
Yeah, so I think I'll cover that one. I think I kind of mentioned that at the end there. Obviously, the process that I've just been through is basically a resubmission. So by all means, you can go ahead and resubmit an updated version of your instance, and that will be reviewed and hopefully, as I've mentioned there, accepted by Companies House.
Okay, thank you. Just looking, we've got quite a few questions come in. I think we might need to go away and get some detailed answers on some of them. But are charitable companies on the permissible list yet?
Yeah, I think we can file charitable companies. It's certainly a filing type which is allowed by Companies House. I believe that we haven't fully completed the auto tagging of the charity content. Just need to double check that, but I think that's the case. So therefore you might need an element of manual tagging in order to get to a position where you can actually submit. Yeah, certainly charitable companies are a valid form of entity which would be accepted by Companies House.
Okay, thank you. In terms of the authentication code, is the Companies House authentication code the same as the one we use for electronic filing of CS01 forms?
I believe it would be a different version. I think you're probably best to contact Companies House about that, but I think it's a completely separate code that they would send through specifically for this type of online filing. But probably for that, you're best to contact Companies House directly.
Okay, thank you. As I say, we have got quite a few questions here, and some of them are a bit in depth. I think they will require us to go away and just get an answer for you, things on pricing and so on. So I think what we'll do is we'll certainly create the Q&A document, and we will attach that to the recording of the webinar that will go on the knowledge base, and we'll also get back to you directly if we haven't answered your question during the session. So I'm going to just move on to the next slide here. So we do have a collection of past webinars which you can watch on the knowledge base. We're also in the process of adding those to our YouTube channel, that's CaseWare Client Services. If you go to our website, you'll be able to see the agenda for future webinars and then pop to YouTube or the knowledge base for past webinars. So that brings us on neatly to our upcoming schedule. This is evolving all the time, so we have got quite a few webinars coming up that we haven't scheduled yet, but you'll be able to see the agendas for those and register to attend via caseware.co.uk and visit the events page. You'll also notice there, which sort of links into some of the things we've been talking about today, we do have a Smart Sync webinar on the 13th of May. So really that brings us to the end of the webinar today and the broadcast. Thank you very much for joining us today. Thank you for your questions. Also, thank you for your patience with our technical issues. If there's any parts of the webinar that you missed or where you were unable to hear the audio or see the video, I know that a couple of you sent in comments saying that you weren't able to hear the audio. Don't worry, there will be the recording, as I say, on the knowledge base, and we'll let you know as soon as that is available. So thank you very much for joining us today, and enjoy the rest of your day, and we'll see you soon.